reviews, discussions, and theories about films in horror, sci-fi, and genre. This is The Horror Deconstruction. Like, share, and subscribe to hear more.
What is up, everybody? It's The Horror Deconstruction. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, most likely on YouTube. Give us a like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell icon. Hit that thumbs up. Let people know that you listen to the show with your host, Comp. And today's film we are talking about on 31 Days of Horror this October is The Collector. The Collector, 2009. Desperate to repay his debt to his ex-wife and ex-con, plots a heist at his new employer's country home, unaware that a second criminal has also targeted the property and rigged it with a series of deadly traps. Directed by Marcus Dunstan, written by Patrick Melton and Marcus Dunstan, starring Josh Stewart, Andrea Roth, and Juan Fernandez. So why did I pick The Collector? Well, this is a film that I remember back in the day, 2009, it coming out, and it was following the trend of all the sort of torture porn films like Saw and Hostel, stuff like that. This was actually supposedly written as a prequel to the Saw series, but it was rejected. These are the guys that worked on the Feast films. I haven't seen those, and I kind of was just like, kind of threw it off. I didn't watch them. I only saw parts of it. The only part I remember vividly when I had seen this, because I worked at a movie theater, is that the main character uses the power of gay slurs against the bad guy to defeat him in some capacity. But actually, it's that when I actually saw the film, it's completely different. Anyway, so this movie entails the efforts of a very good actor. I know I have seen him in a couple things, but he's one of those that guy actors that you've seen in everything, but you just can't nail down what he's from. Is Josh Stewart. He plays Arkin, who's this guy who was working on. They're doing refurbishments, or they're trying to fix up this house, as they call it, Detroit decor, which means bars in the windows so nobody breaks in. That's what they say in the movie. I didn't say that. And this very house of rich family, this older guy with his two daughters and his wife, I think she just injects Botox at will. She just does that. They're fixing this house up. He's actually still casing the place, and he has a good relationship with the guy who owns the house, so this is kind of scummy of the main character. So already we have sort of a conflicted main character. This is a movie that is like we have spoken about Don't Breathe, which I think was a disappointing film. Danny and I didn't like that. Livid certainly was a disappointing house, breaking into the house and running into something you're not supposed to film. And this is breaking into a house and running into something you're not supposed to, which I think is actually better. So I had low expectations for this film, but I was pleasantly surprised and actually was really entertained by this movie. And it's a cheap little slasher, and it is torture porn. I don't know how you really, like, when I think of torture porn, like, obviously it's like Saw, it's people basically going to be tortured, and it's just there's an excess sort of concentration on the torturing itself. Not necessarily in this, although there are like grisly traps. Basically, I think this works as for what it is. It still has that piss-colored, green-colored look throughout the whole film. Like, obviously this movie has a lower budget than its sequel did, and it's very much mimicking how Saw looked, the original Saw, which had this sort of piss-colored, green-colored look to it. And they were all ripping off Seven, which had the original look, but obviously Seven is in a league of its own. Very stylized. I really enjoy the editing in this film, especially the editing hides a bit of the cheapness of the movie. And they're only really working in one location, but everything works out. Like, it looks like a cheap movie, but they do a lot with hiding it, especially the traps and the gore and stuff like that. So we're following Arkin, strange name, but Arkin is this guy who in the film it's weird because the woman that he's trying to give money to is supposedly his ex-wife, which I'm reading here, but he treats her like his wife and he kisses her and everything. So I'm like, they have a very cold relationship, but he's kissing her and he's holding her, and I'm like, but this is like, if you're an ex with somebody, I mean, there's a lot of complicated relationships. He has a little daughter. He they show his sort of good guy element. Like if you saw Squid Games, when the main character fed a cat at the beginning of the Squid Games, they show him being nice to a young girl because he himself has a little daughter, and he asks the little girl if they have like what would she want if she had a birthday, and so he buys a little bear for his daughter on the recommendation of that little girl. The family treats him almost like a family friend because they know him. The daughter, I don't know how old she is. I don't know how old her character is supposed to be. I assume maybe 16, but I assume the actress is 18 because she has a topless scene in the movie. Because I was like, wait a minute, what the hell is this? And so the daughter's a little bitchy, but she's like hitting on him, and he's kind of like, he has to get out of here because that family is waiting to go on a family trip, and so they're guarding the house. I just realized as I'm saying this, they're trying to safeguard the house when they're gonna make a trip because apparently they have a lot of expensive items in the house. And what we find out later, that Arkin realizes that there's this stone over there, much like the movie Uncut Gems, like this uncut gem stone that's locked away somewhere in the house, and he assumes it's at a safe behind one of the vanity mirrors in the home. Arkin has recently gotten out of jail. He spent 2 years in jail. I don't know if it was specific why. Obviously, it must have been a robbery or something smaller. Sometimes, like murder, people get like 5 years. The justice system is all fucked up. Who knows what he was in jail for. But he is doing work in this house. I don't know how you get a job securing homes if you are an ex-con, because I think there's like laws against that. I'm not sure. Maybe they just didn't check up what he did. And anyway, so what happens is his wife borrowed money from loan sharks, so they're gonna give her shit. So she's like, I need this money for the loan sharks. So he devises a plan. He goes to this guy that he was in jail with, who was played by character actor Robert Wisdom. If you've seen him, then you automatically would know who he's from. He's playing Roy. He's this underworld guy who I guess went back into the business after it, just like Arkin is about to. And he says, hey, I need this money by midnight to pay off these loan sharks so I guess they don't break my wife's legs or something. I don't know what the loan sharks are going to do. So, there's a little argument between, because he wants to facilitate giving the jewel to Roy so Roy can fence it and give him the money, 40%. There was a 50% thing. So they decide, okay, I'm the only guy who can break into this house, and I know where everything is, because apparently he's like a master lock picker and stuff like that. And the movie proceeds that way, where he breaks into this house. The actual opening of the film has one of those stingers like Scream or any of these like Saw, where a gory scare event happens, because the thing with these horror movies, they don't rely on building characters to eventually get to the scares. They have to show you the scare at the beginning to like fool you into thinking that the next half an hour won't be just exposition, which is fine. It works with this movie. And so he spends the next about 15 minutes of the film, we're getting character study. He turns out to be a pretty interesting character. I mean, we know he's a bad guy. We eventually know he's probably going to be the hero of the movie. So he breaks into this house, and eventually the whole movie is about him just trying to save the family that has come under the grasp of this character, the Collector. The Collector had, at the beginning of the first part of the film, the opening of it, he leaves like a box that's left as a decoy for somebody to open, and then they're trapped in some sense. What the Collector's modus operandi is that he kills everybody in a house but keeps one person, so he can kind of, in a cyclical fashion, use that person as a bait for the next house. And he's not really explaining what he did, which is fine. This was originally supposed to be a Jigsaw movie, not by the original writers of Saw, but like people that I guess they asked to make this type of film. And apparently this movie and the second one made enough movie and have enough of a cult following that they wanted to make a third one. But I don't think it would like really set the bar for any type of film. But I think this first film is actually much better than I expected it to be, and maybe it's because I had low expectations, but it really does Don't Breathe much better than Don't Breathe does. I will give Don't Breathe credit for, like, the main bad guy is actually super, like, what he does is so fucking super creepy. I wouldn't think they would put that in a mainstream film because people are so sensitive about shit like that. but then they try to make a hero in the second movie, and you're like, okay. But anyway, with this one, I like that Arkin is in this house, and the collector guy, who has a really cool design. His mask is it's like one of the like older Slipknot masks. It's not, there's nothing like super interesting about the mask itself. It's just, it looks like a mask if you're taking it off halfway and just left it on. Obviously, like, this guy had to make this mask somewhere at some effects store. And but the cool thing about it is, like, he has these sort of weird contact lenses which make his eyes look blown out, and whenever he walks around, his eyes look like they have this night vision effect on him. So not that he can see in night, but his eyes have this weird glint to them, which is really cool. Other than that, there's nothing really specifically interesting about his look himself besides his mask. He kind of just wears traditional, like, robber clothing, I guess. And the death traps in this film are actually pretty cool. Like, as Arkin is moving from room to room, and my thing with a lot of houses and films is that there's no sort of set way to see how a house is built, and you sort of get that with this film, that it's better better written navigation wise. Like, I can believe this is downstairs, I can believe that's that room, I can believe this is upstairs, I don't believe that this house has more rooms than it should be. This is a rich person's house, so obviously it's going to be bigger than an average house, so there's more rooms around. So I bought that. I like that Arkin is unseen throughout this whole film until the last 15 minutes. So there's two criminal acts happening at the same time. So this guy realizes, like, Arkin has a crisis of conscience, because he realizes, he has to at least save somebody in this horrible situation, because as he's trying to get around through his house, he's actually accidentally hitting some of the traps himself and getting injured, and he can't make a noise because, one, he didn't want the family to know, but that the family's not an issue now. It's whoever the fuck else is putting all these death traps in this house. So there's stuff like, and I like how quick to work the collector goes in basically making somebody's house a fun house. Like, he's just fucking rigging like wire, so if you trip it, a cleaver will hit you. I don't think that's actually the second one. Or like a chandelier with knives on it will fall on you. Bear traps in one room if you trip and fall in there. So it's actually really, there's like he put a glue trap with acid on it, which I don't understand. Wouldn't the acid go through the floor? And there's a cat that gets stuck in the glue acid. So you do see like cat trauma, you see dog trauma in this movie, but obviously it's all phony. I do like, there's windows that fall and cut people in half and shit like that. It's like, or cut animals in half. It's graphic. The gore is pretty graphic, pretty good graphic gore. It's excessive but not like overindulgent. I like gory horror films, so I'm fine like that. But this doesn't seem to like linger on gore for too long. Like, when one movie has nothing else to offer, they'll just sort of show a dead body and gore like for 20 minutes straight, or actually seconds longer than it should be. But I think it's really well done. I think Arkin is a really great and interesting lead character played by Josh Stewart. I think everybody else is sort of okay standard B-movie acting level. Nothing super interesting with the acting. It's, what this type of film is. It's I go back to how fast the editing is in this film. I really like the opening and end credits. There's sort of this weird music video-esque sort of editing that lean towards like the Saw and the Seven sort of editing type of tropes, where it's just quick cutting, but it works for this sort of music video-esque type of film. I think that the whole general idea is done really well, of a thief trying to get into a house and steal an item. So you are rooting for two instances. I'm not going to spoil it, because I think this is very much a recommendation to check out this cult film. It's sort of vanished in the horror collections, so if you will, of horror movies, but I think this is actually worth watching. This is actually well worth watching, and the sequel to a degree is actually worth watching, because it does have, and I'll discuss it in the next episode. It does have a very satisfying conclusion. Both these films, well, this film is, since it's like the first of a planned trilogy, it's sort of not satisfying conclusion, but since there's a second one that connects to the first one, I think it works really well. It's a fucking unbelievable how much this collector guy gets away with stuff, especially in the second film, because you have to uh, make things bigger than what you expected in the sequel. But we'll get to that one. So yes, I do recommend this film. I think Arkin's a pretty interesting main character who gets ballsy. If you're offended by slurs, there is a heaping helping of it towards the end of this film, where you can't get away with that nowadays. I guess they would be too afraid to put that in a movie with people talking like they actually talk in movies, to question a guy's manhood in the movie. And I always thought that was funny because the guy's like this guy's a serial killer, but he's still offended by being called these things. Like rightly, anybody should. So maybe. I think that this works as a horror film. It goes above its budget. I don't know if I've seen much of Marcus Dunstan and Patrick Melton's work. I always confuse them with these other directors, but they did good. They did good work with this movie, this first movie, in making it their own thing from something that was supposed to be a Saw movie. I think they really did great work with changing it into something else. I think they worked on Saw 5. I think that might have been one of the only ones that were actually good. Was it Saw 5 or Saw 6? Saw 5, I think it had to do with like a lawyer running around. But I one of the Saws, I'm not a fan of the Saw movies. I like the first movie, and the rest of them have been pretty bad. But I think Saw 5 is the one that I enjoyed, where there's like a lawyer running around looking to get his ass out of all these death traps. Regardless of that, I think that this is definitely worth a watch. You should check it out and enjoy it, because this is one of those old school horror slasher movies that does not become apologetic for anything that it does. It's just straight up entertainment, and sometimes you just want a fun horror slasher movie, and this is what I think is really worth your time. So I would give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. Trying to get out of a glue death trap, but you gotta help the cat sometimes. And with that, this has been the Horror Deconstruction. Thanks for listening.